Good evening, everyone. Model Man Frank here. How is everybody doing today? Um, how is everyone doing? Good morning. I'm sorry. Good evening again. Good evening. Model Man Frank here. How you doing today? Just wanted to make sure I was live there. Um, Hope everybody's weekend is doing really well, and hope you guys have had a great week. Since see, everybody can see I cut my hair really short. Summertime, it's when it gets to summer, it's 90 degrees outside, and if you have a lot of hair, of course you sweat more, especially when you're working out on the field, on a runway, or working in a hangar or anything like that. Uh, Little, just to give a heads up, thank you very much to anyone who has are new to the channel. I appreciate your subscription. I'm so happy that you subscribed. My channel, as you can see, is I do eclectic of a lot of different aviation uh, uh, subjects. Just to give you a heads up, I am also on Patreon. Patreon's a free channel. You can join. It's kind of like a social media, but it is not social media. You can meet up with other creators up there and have one-on-one conversations up there. I don't have Facebook or X or whatever those other platforms are. If you want to join the Patreon page, you'll see my name up there, Model Man Frank. You go to Patreon, you sign up, and it's some content is free, and other content, if you donate to the cause, to the page, it helps me do more with this channel. And believe me, I want to do a lot more. Peyton, good evening. Welcome to the show tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about the 757. We're going to get right into it. The 757 was a unique plane, that it was a totally different design. Since the 707 had just come out a couple of years before, almost, it's 1978, and they're already started to talk about another aircraft, which was going to take them into the new millennium, which Boeing was looking towards. The 22nd century or the 21st century was going to be ending. So we're going into a new millennium, and Boeing's already thinking ahead. Hey, listen, we're doing really well. The 707 was a success. We're now having the 727, and at that time, when the 727 came out, so was the 737, which we will talk about that. But again, I will talk about it more lengthy at another date. It's just there's so much going on with the 737, and with all the controversies that are going on with that aircraft, I really don't want to get into it right now. So Boeing wanted to do a twofold. They wanted to make more of a it's a word I need to get right, technology demonstrator, and build an airliner at the same time. The 757 was going to meet all those criteria. They were going to have a revolutionary design in the 757. It was going to have the same seating configuration as the successful 727, with the 3-3 seating, and then 2-2 seating of business class, or what is known now as business class. Back then it was known as first class. So you had first class and you had coach. Back then, first class and coach was separated by a skirt, a curtain. And business class, you would, which would be first class, you have very wide seating, like the chair that I'm sitting in, and you would really have, you'd get champagne and all the stuff that you get in business class nowadays. So, this aircraft was going to have a little bit more of an increase in capacity, in terms of a little bit longer aircraft. It was going to be same style fuselage setup, but it was going to be a longer plane. And instead of the 727 setup, or with the tri-jets with the two engines on the side and the tall engine on the tail, it was going to be a totally different way they were going to do it. They were going to do it in the way as have two engines to power the aircraft, and they would be slung on the wings with pylons. So the wing that they were going to design was later on going to be used in other designs as a 767 and later in future models of the 777. The 777 back in 1978 was already being thought of, but they didn't know that they were going to make a wide body twin engine aircraft. They knew that they were going to have other planes. The 747 was already flying. So they knew that they were looking ahead into the future of what they were going to design and what aircraft they were going to build. The 787 hadn't even been thought of yet. They just were thinking as far as the 777. So there was going to be, in 1978, the company announced that it would propose a development new family, new family in terms of retaining the 7X7, which would be later 767 and 777. The first of three differing by retaining the same fuselage cross section as the 727. Okay, it would have a seating configuration of 178 passenger mixed class. So the plane would have a setup of mixed class seating. Let me add. So yeah, sorry about that. I wanted to show you guys the Patreon channel. Right here. There's the Patreon channel. You guys can follow me there. If you want to join Patreon and help the cause, please go right ahead. And I'll put a link in the description box below to Patreon so you can follow me there also. I have a lot of interesting things that I put in there, but I'll tell you more about it at the end of the program. So, back to the 757. So, the 757 was, again, a revolutionary plane. They were going to have a seating capacity between 178 and 224 passengers. So, the plane was going to be in the same configuration as the 727, 3322, like I said. And they went ahead and started getting ready to produce this aircraft. It was started in 1978. They started doing the design work on the plane and bringing out this this revolutionary aircraft. The wing design on the plane. Let me show you this photo here. This is the cross section of what the interior of the plane was going to look like. They already knew what it was going to be, so they're starting to build the plane. So, first flight for this aircraft, was going to be, their target date was the 1980s. So they had 3 years to build this plane. As many of you know, it takes a little while to design a plane and to get a configuration out, such as this. So, a lot of different airlines had expressed interest in the aircraft. Pan Am was one of them, expressed interest, but later on in the end, Pan Am never really went ahead and bought the plane. But Eastern Airlines was a big purchaser of this aircraft, and when Eastern Airlines bought, they were the first ones in line to get the plane. Sorry about this. Having a little bit of a technical problem. But they were the very first ones to get the plane. I flew on the 757, I think 2 times. I flew on Mexicana to Mexico from Tampa, and on the way back we flew on American Airlines. I think it was American Airlines. American Airlines purchased a lot of them. They got most of their planes from some mergers, I think around that time period. So, just to be, let me cut into this chase right here, just to make a fix from last week's program. I said that the that Northwest Airlines was purchased by American. In fact, they were purchased by Delta Airlines. I do apologize. There's so much information to remember in this brain, in this noggin, and I got the mergers completely mixed up. U.S. Air was later on bought by American, and then Northwest was later on merged with Delta Airlines. So if somebody pointed that out in the comment section, and I told the gentleman, you're absolutely correct, I do apologize for that information. So just want to make that correction known that Northwest was bought by Delta Airlines. So 1982 rolls around, okay, and on February 19th, it's the winter time, February 19th, 1982, the first flight and the rollout of the 757 comes to pass. If you look at it, doesn't look like any Boeing aircraft that Boeing had ever produced to that date time. They had the 737, they had the 727, and then they had the 707, which was a 4-engine aircraft, and they had the 747 flying also, which was also a double-decker 4-engine aircraft. So this was revolutionary for this time period. Also, in 1982, computers were starting to make a big initiation into the mainstream. This plane had some revolutionary things inside the cockpit. One of them being, it was only 2 persons. There was no engineer station, I believe, in this aircraft. On this plane. There was no engineering station. It was the pilot and the co-pilot. So pilot and first officer, okay, that were in this plane. Just like the 737s that had come out previously before this model, it was 2 people in the cockpit. So the 757 was, depending on the customer, what the customer ordered, the 757 first rolled out with Rolls-Royce RB211-535C turbofans. Okay? Depending on the customer, what the customer wanted. I think most American Airlines and some of the other American-based companies, they wanted Pratt & Whitney. So they got Pratt & Whitney's. But when the plane first rolled out, it had Rolls-Royce motors. And they were efficient motors. Rolls-Royce makes a very good motor. So the first service with the aircraft, again, was Eastern Airlines. Eastern Airlines flew the plane, and they used it on domestic and international routes. So if you were going to go from New York to Puerto Rico, you're going to be flying on this plane, Eastern Airlines. So a lot of the Caribbean flights, that would be from New York or from Miami or from the Florida area down to the Caribbean, you were flying on a 757. 757s would go into St. Martin and Puerto Rico and some of the other Caribbean nations. Like, also they would fly in. You would fly into Jamaica, in Kingston, I believe, and almost every major carrier after Eastern Airlines took delivery of an aircraft. Eastern Airlines, American Airlines, Aeromexico had them. American Airlines had their planes were, if many of you have seen the 757 dressed up in American Airlines colors back in the day, because because of the 787 when it came out later on, American Airlines had chrome finish. So just like Eastern Airlines did. So, you didn't see the painted schemes like you just do now. Back then it was bare metal on American Airlines flights. American Airlines had bare metal on their planes. Every major carrier had the 757. American Airlines, Aeromexico, Allegiant Air They started off with 757s. Um, Let me bring up a photo here with. I do have a one. So American Airlines, Asia Pacific Airlines. I'm not too familiar with that airline, but they did purchase. They were an American carrier. I'm just kind of like going through some of the carriers. Northwest had them. TWA, National Airlines, Condor, British Airways, ATA. ATA was very. That was a company that had this aircraft. So you were going to have the 757-100, and then you were going to later have the 757-200. As you can tell in this photo, you can actually see the 757-100 was a shorter body. The 757-100 was going to be a bigger aircraft. It was going to be able to fit a 224 to close to 275 per 250 passenger count, and that's not including your flight crew and all that sort of stuff. So as the 1980s rolled in, they started using it on domestic routes, and then later on, they started to use the aircraft on longer routes. The 757-200 came out, and again, you either had Rolls-Royce motors or Pratt & Whitney's. Dimensions for the 200 model, okay, the 757-200, which is the longer body, the wingspan was 124 feet from wingtip to wingtip. Later on, going into the 2000s, that's when they started adding winglets. Now, if nobody really knows what the winglets are for, winglets are basically to increase the lift on the aircraft. If you've ever watched the airplanes at the airports, you'll always notice when you look at a plane rolling down the runway, the wings will start to fly first before the body. So the winglets actually help increase the lift on the wings. Because when you have that cutoff, you're losing a lot of lift, and you're creating more of a vortex also. With the winglets, you don't get that much, but you get vortex, and you do get wake turbulence. The aircraft could travel almost 11,700 nautical miles. I'm sorry, 2,476 miles. And it could travel at a height of 38,400 feet. I remember flying on the plane to Mexico, and it's a very sleek design. It's very quiet. You do get the roll, the motors and the traveling of the air going over it, but it is a really nice aircraft to fly in. If depending on the class configuration in the plane and the destination you were traveling, you've got your meal service. You would have either a breakfast meal or a lunch or a dinner. So back then you would actually have a full meal. Now it's maybe you'll get a little bag. The wingspan on this plane was 124 feet. Length of the fuselage itself was 155 feet. That was on the 200 model. There's not many 757-100s flying. There's mostly the 757-100 is mostly flying in the private configuration, which is the BBJ model, which is Boeing business jets. They're private jets. I think the Chilean president has one. Also, the military version of this aircraft was the C-32. You have seen the 757-100 being used in the private sector. Most notably as Air Force One or Air Force Two. Air Force One is when the president's on board. So when the president has to fly domestically and doesn't want to fly in the 747, they use the 757 to fly the president to a smaller airport, somewhere in the country. Now, if he's going to be flying along the eastern seaboard, you're most likely probably going to see the 757. Dignitaries, senators, so on and so forth, or the vice president will be flying on the 757 series or the 767 series. 757 series in the military version is known as C-32. It's not known as Air Force 2. It's just C-32. They're painted up the same colors as the presidential aircraft. So that aircraft, wing areas, so the height of the aircraft from the nose to the tail, okay, to the top of the tail, was 44 feet 6 inches. Pretty tall plane. Somebody actually has one. This aircraft was also used heavily, like I said, as a Boeing business jet. So you got the C-93 being used, and then President Trump has a 757, and it's set up in the private configuration. And I got a photo of his aircraft here. That way y'all can see what it's look. If you've been living under a rock lately, you would have not seen it. But if you have never seen it, this is the 757 model of his aircraft, which they call as Trump 1. His is set up in a business class configuration. It's got business seating, and he's able to take his entourage with him where he goes. Secret Services, because since he's an ex-president, he has a Secret Service detail that flies with him, and his private security. The C-93 model, the C-32 model of this plane was used by a company called Condor, and they mated the aircraft when the F-22 and the F-35 were going through testing, by Honeywell, and they needed a test bed. This aircraft, the 757, was used, and I'm going to show you what it looked like. Looked kind of funky looking, with the nose of the F-22 Raptor on it. And they also used it with the wings, not a wing structure per se. Just gonna make it a little bigger here so you will be able to see it. So the 757 was used as a flying test bed. They would either have special noses attached to the front of the aircraft and special sensors put in the plane, and they would also add a wing to the top. And they could do different configurations. They also had one that would actually have a motor attached to the side of it. So Honeywell actually used this aircraft to do extensive testing for the next generation fighter jets, Gen 5 aircraft, Gen 4 aircraft that were coming out. This plane is still flying as of today. Some have started to go into retirement, but I do feel that this plane is going to last a little bit longer. It is a fuel efficient plane for the age that it's at. It really, for what is its purpose was built for, it is a fuel efficient aircraft. So you could do many different aspects with this plane. You could attach a motor to it. This photo that you see here, you can actually see that it has a jet engine. A propeller-driven engine on it. That's a turbine. Okay. They also have one. If you look around the internet, you'll be able to find it, and you can see that it has a jet engine on the top of it. Really interesting to see. And they run tests on it, and they power the engine up so it, they can run the different types of tests at different altitudes. They can, before they test the plane out, they can put a motor on the side of it and see what altitude will that motor run at. So they can see, that's how they did the 787, to find out what the Rolls-Royce motor would, what the ceiling altitude was on the Rolls-Royce aircraft. They would do it with the 747. The 747, that's in Everett Museum. The very first one was used as a flying test bed for many, many years. It even flew for years just before the 777 went into effect. They used the motor, the GE90, was used on the 747 as a test bed because that was the biggest aircraft that would be able to carry the GE90 777 motor. So yeah, this is, the 757 doesn't have, a lot of history. I do apologize. I don't have so much to tell you about it. The Saudi Arabian princes have them. It's a really good plane. And if you're looking at a cross section of this aircraft, you'll notice that it actually has almost the same wing configuration as a 767. And let me show you that photo here. I think I have it. No, I don't. Do apologize. I don't have that photo, but I will put it in a contact, and you guys can actually see later on. If you look at the cross section of that aircraft, you would be able to see that it has the same wing design as later models, the 767 and the 777. So this was the very first. 737 was the first one to really come out with a two cockpit configuration, two control yoke configuration. They had eliminated the mechanics seat behind, and 757, being a bigger plane, just had the first officer and the captain's chair. Now, I'm not sure about European aircraft like British Airways, Condor, and other companies that flew them overseas. If you're sharing the video and you share the video on other platforms, and you know anybody that's flown this airplane, and they could tell me, maybe leave a comment in the comment section below. Did other people fly with extra crew on board for this aircraft? I'm not too sure about that, but if you say yes, please leave a detailed comment down below, and I'll respond back to you, and I'll make you known in the next video. We're gonna make the video a little short today, but that was the history of the 757 when it entered service. The aircraft is still flying in service today. A lot of aircraft that have come out since then owe their design cues from the 757. The A300, the A310, and others. If you look at them, they kind of have that same look and design. And let's not forget, the Chinese now have their own private airline company, and most likely it is a copy of an airplane. But yeah, they're flying their own company also, and if you could call it that, So again, any news of the day? I really don't have much in terms of news to talk about. I put out some videos, some short videos, if you've looked at them. I have a build video that I'm doing of the flight test. So Flight Test makes foam board aircraft as kits. And I went ahead, and a friend of mine at the model airplane field gave me one. He doesn't want one, but I went ahead and built mine. It's getting closer to completion. Let me show you what it looks like. I got it way back here. So this is the Flight 3DX. So you can see this thing is massive. I'm going to try and finish it out. I've got a video that I'm putting together, contriving of the build, and I'll put my final thoughts in that build video of what I think about this kit. I've got real mixed reactions and mixed reviews on it. Some part of me says I like it. Other parts of me, I'm not a really big fan of them. But I'm not a big fan of 3D planes, anyways. So this is my first 3D aircraft. I'll see how I feel when I fly it. But you know, I like flying scale planes, like, you know, P-47s, Corsairs, F-86, uh, uh, Twin Otter. You know, like some of the ones you see behind me. But this is really my first real delve. I built a foam board Piper Cub once, and it didn't do well. But it was my first time, and it just, the wings flew off and didn't really do well for me at all. I will build another Piper Cub in foam board because I really do believe that this medium is something that can be used. So this I will be putting out a video of this, most likely either this week or next week. So look for my thoughts on this, and this will be the very first real build video review of an aircraft like this. So this is kind of like, oh my gosh. So yeah, this is the very first time of me ever making like a build video of me putting it together and then giving you my final thoughts. And I hope to be able to do that with the Liberty Sport also. So yeah, go over to Patreon if you get a chance. Sign up for free. You can watch. You can follow me on there for free. And there's other people that are on there also. You may want to check out Noel Phillips. He puts out a really good channel. He flies on different airlines around the world, and I do believe he flies on a 757. And you know, different airlines have different setups and the way they do things. But yeah, you may want to check his channel out. There's also a bunch of other different channels out there that just type in 757. But this plane is, this and the 757 and the 767 are going to be the last of the planes that you see flying into the new millennium. You're not going to really, these planes are going to disappear little by little. And if you do a lot of traveling, and you ever do get a chance to go traveling somewhere and you see them at the airport, you'll be able to say, you know what, I watched a video and this guy told me that plane came out in 1978. And that's what these videos are for. So, again, thanks a lot for watching, guys. And if you can, please hit the thumbs up button. Helps out with the algorithm. And also, if you're not a subscriber and you just joined up today to watch the channel, hit the subscribe button. I promise you, you're going to see a lot of cool stuff on my channel. And if you can, follow me over there at Patreon. And if you want to join the cause and help out making, you know, help me making out better videos and putting out more content on this channel and building this channel a little bit more, please give me a hand, and I really would appreciate it. But other than that, I really appreciate you joining me tonight on this broadcast. If you're watching on playback, again, thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Please share the channel. It'd be greatly appreciated. Next week, we will talk about the 747 and the two derivative models that came out of the 747 and the entire lineup of the 747. It is a favorite aircraft of mine, and I'm sure it is the favorite aircraft of everybody else here on this channel that are subscribers. We have the 740 SP, the 747-100, the 200, 300, 400, and famously the 800 series, and the freighter versions that are still flying around today. So yes, next week we'll talk about the 747, and I've flown on the 747 many times, and my wife has flown on the 747, and we all see the 747 flying out there. So we'll have a really good conversation next week about the 747. So, Trevor, thank you very much for joining. If you guys can watch on the playback, you guys have a good night, and we will talk to you all next week. keep in touch. Model Man